Remake of The Thing is one of the most bastardized abortions of a movie I've ever seen. It is a shallow attempt to recreate the perfection of that lightning-in-a-bottle masterpiece that is the original. At no point in the film does it even come close to that ball-gripping tension of John Carpenter's magnum opus. And you know what? It never could. This movie was doomed from the start. John Carpenter has had an amazing career producing cult classic movies. Halloween, Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, They Live, and more. Assault on Precinct 13 got a remake, Rob Zombie tried to reboot Halloween, hell, they're even trying to remake Big Trouble. But think to yourself, has there really been a good Halloween movie after the first one? I think maybe you could make a case for 3, just because it's so different, but it's really only a Halloween movie by name. But God, they even fuck Michael up. The mask in the first one is perfect in every way, but in each subsequent movie, they're unable to recapture that simplicity. But I'm getting off in the weeds here. John Carpenter's The Thing is one of, if not my favorite movie of all time. It was a horror movie unlike any I'd seen before. It's able to build genuine fear and tension like I'd never experienced previously. I have an extensive background in film, so I've been desensitized to most stuff in movies. Even horror movies don't really scare me because I can't get dragged into that world. I always just see it as a movie. It's very difficult to find something that scares me in film, and that's what I love about The Thing. It made me scared. And not in the sense that I'm having nightmares now or I jump in terror, but the circumstances and tension continue to escalate throughout the runtime. It put me on the edge of my seat with that nervous feeling of, oh fuck, running through my veins. The problem was, I wasn't the only person that felt that. Other cult nerds did too. Enough that a remake was only a matter of time. Just look at what had been coming out in the years surrounding the release of The Thing. Carrie, Crazies, Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, Fright Night, I Spit on Your Grave, My Bloody Valentine, in 3! Elm Street, Piranha, in 3! Silent Night, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and The Wolfman. This was a period when Blumhouse had already become well established with Paranormal Activity, but hadn't really come to dominate the market like they did just a few years later. That second wave of horror remakes, the first in the early 2000s porting over mainly Eastern horror, and the second as the 2010s began to start up. Just like any movie, the story of the remake started well before they even rolled camera. Now, the production details behind this movie aren't as clear as something like Tomorrowland. I can't tell you who came up with the idea of making a remake of The Thing, whether it was the director, or writer, or producer, or studio. Someone thought they could make enough money off this remake, and it got greenlit.
No.
They cast the leads for Joel Edgerton, fresh off of Guardians of the Ga'Hoole and Warrior, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, fresh off of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Riley Stern's Dick. Playing second fiddle to the American actors are the actual Norwegian cast. You know, the guys whose base this is, the guys who this story is about, the guys who should have been the main focus of this movie instead of this saber-swallowing horror. Other than that, I don't think there's much else you need to know before going in here. If you haven't seen Carpenter's The Thing, stop this video and go watch it now. Like, actually right fucking now. Don't give me the, oh, I don't like horror movies shtick. Really though, this is one of the greatest movies ever made, and I'm gonna spoil absolutely everything about it. Please don't take the experience of watching it for the first time away from yourself. This movie is top tier Kino. Oh god, I just used Kino in a sentence. I need to stop browsing TV. I'm a giant faggot. Just like Ouija 2, right off the bat is an old Universal logo. However, this is a little more insulting than Ouija 2 because Ouija 2 was meant to create a general nostalgia for old-style movies. This is done at the opening of The Thing to generate a direct nostalgic connection to the original. But here's the weird part about this. The logo they use in the remake isn't the one they use in the original. The original uses the same standard logo used in 1982, but the remake uses the logo from the 90s. Even weirder, the original doesn't even show the Universal logo to the very end of the film, after the credits have rolled, and instead opens on From the opening frames, this movie is dying to be the original, but at the same time wants to be at least somewhat different. It's going in two different directions, splitting itself apart. We see another logo, and then we get to the actual footage. See, this movie immediately fails to understand what made the thing so good, and will continue to fail to understand that throughout the rest of the film. It sets atmosphere from the first note. You see Term & Foster Company. You've never seen that name. You don't see their logo. Music is already playing. The one real gripe I have with the opening of the original is the inclusion of the saucer. If it just opened on the Norwegians and the chopper, it would be fucking excellent. But anyway, the remake sets up everything differently. It's scenic shots of a steep map, using the same font as the original. We cut to a couple of Norgies telling jokes to each other on the snowmobile, and again, this movie misunderstands the greatness of the original. The tone and pacing are opposite. The tone here is casual. It's day to day. The original, there's guys in a helicopter very intent on sniping a dog. But the Norgies have an oscilloscope and are looking for some signal. In the original, characters existed in the world and were brought into danger by the coincidence of the dog reaching their camp. In the remake, these guys are already out in the snow looking for something. This movie is going to go on and explain every single piece of mystery the thing had. The remake decides to throw the Norgies down an ice chasm, making some action drama at the opening. It puts the characters in an extremely dangerous situation almost instantly, unlike the original that instead opts for almost 30 minutes of slow burn goodness. Sure, the helicopter explodes, but that doesn't put the characters in danger like this ice chasm. The Norgies look down and see the spaceship, and we get the title card. And this title card is emblematic of the divide between the two movies. Practical versus digital. The original used a cutout of the logo on a fish tank with the burning piece of paper and a light shining through it. It looks beautiful. The remake uses a radial dissolve. See, the magic of what makes that movie so good is symbolically sucked away in the title. The scene blends into the next, and we see an animal carcass that looks suspiciously like the dog thing, and Mew, or Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I'm going to be calling her Mew for the rest of this because it's a little easier than saying her whole name, is giving the carcass an anal probing. Norge Science Man and his assistant come in and start talking to her, and the lighting of the scene is just so flat. We're talking flatter than your favorite lolly levels of flat. And that's true for the entire movie. Everything has the same bleak lighting. And when the characters are outside, it's too dark. There's no balance whatsoever. Even when they're given the chance to do something interesting lighting-wise, like when characters use flares, they don't. The flares barely light the characters' faces, let alone the scene. In the original, the flares are able to create these reds and purples that mix great with the blues of the night snow. So these guys are here to recruit her because she's good at paleontology? Is that the best they can come up with? And this girl? The one who looks like she's still working on her master's thesis or something? You couldn't have gotten an Alan Grant type character? Or someone who at least looks like they have enough age for them to be believable that the Norwegian government science team would come to get them. And you mean to tell me that the Norwegians don't have someone in their own country capable of doing what she can do? They're gonna reach out to the Americans to share in this scientific discovery? No, I understand diversity is our strength, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say the Norwegians probably have plenty experience digging dead bones out of the ice. I think they probably had someone capable, but they maybe chose her for other reasons. Being a paleontologist, maybe they had a few bones they wanted her to discover, if you know what I'm saying. There's a problem with this scene, though. Can you spot it? It's not in Antarctica! It destroys that atmosphere that the original so delicately crafts. We never leave Antarctica. We never see anything past the snowy ridges surrounding Outpost 31. I know that it's only showing an interior scene, and I know it sounds like I'm nitpicking the fuck out of this movie, but you gotta understand. I'm addressing all this because all these little turds that lump together to create the giant pile of shit that this movie is overall.
That is one big pile of shit.
It's not bad because of one big glaring problem, but all the small details you don't pick up on so easily. And it's impossible for me to not compare this movie to the original. This is pretty much going to follow the theme of where the remake went wrong versus where the original went right. But being somewhere in Antarctica removes that claustrophobia that worked so well in its predecessor.
But I'll tell you one thing, I worked for that guy for 3 years, and I have never seen him this excited.
Really? I thought this guy was Norwegian, not German. Is this the face of excitement? I don't see any John Hammond spark in his eyes as he's inviting this girl on the scientific discovery of a lifetime. We cut to them in the helicopter and they're talking to each other without wearing headphones, which, by the way, she'd either go deaf or have massive hearing damage. You don't get to keep your headphones off. The sustained loudness of the rotors would destroy your ears, let alone communication at room level volume. But then the other American guy needs her to put on the headphones to speak.
I was hoping maybe you could help me with something. I can't seem to get a hold of a newspaper that's not, 3 weeks old, and I'm a man in kind of desperate need of certain information.
Don't do this to yourself, man.
And what information would that be?
I want to know how the Cavaliers are doing.
I don't follow football.
Okay, here's another tiny detail to detachment and isolation the guys feel down there. Remember when Childs and Palmer are watching game shows?
I don't know how this one ends.
I can't seem to get a hold of a newspaper that's not, 3 weeks old.
There's a subtlety to how Palmer reacts to seeing the same show on tape, compared to the in-your-face Cavs reference. The guys also mention that there's a storm coming in.
There's a storm moving in. A nasty one.
Which is meant to set up tension. But in the original, it was just the first week of winter.
First goddamn week of winter.
Storms pass. Winter forces you to hunker down for months. Winter made it so there was no radio communication with the outside world.
Look, I haven't been able to reach shit in 2 weeks. I doubt if anybody's talked to anybody on this entire continent, and you want me to reach somebody.
The stakes are already lowered in this movie. Winter is far more menacing than a fucking storm.
And the last place where you want to be is cooped up with a dozen Norwegian guys.
Now I get that they wanted this big shot of the ship in the cave, but wouldn't all that ice be packed above the ship? Like, the ship wouldn't be resting in a cave, it would be completely swallowed by the ice, because that's exactly what happened in the original. The Norwegians found the saucer and started drilling, digging, and blasting ice away to get to it. They don't hollow out a cave, they bring the whole roof down upon it.
Should I ask you, how fragile is it?
It's not in a fracture zone, so there's very little risk of fissuring. And the ice is quite dense, so we think we can get it out in one piece.
Good. And the crane, do we have something that's appropriate for this?
Yeah, it's already there. It's all set up.
So, you've got it all taken care of. I don't think you really need me.
Did she read the script or something?
Oh, that's Lars. He doesn't understand English.
Okay, so we know who's gonna survive now. Everyone's gonna die except Lars. Also, why are there windows? Wouldn't it be freezing in there? This should be the only accepted windows in this base, you know what I'm saying? We also get a scene with the other woman in the base, and now you got me thinking about the sexual dynamics of the Norwegians. And I know I'm not the only one thinking this too. Does she share the showers with the rest of the guys? Does she have her own shower? Can you imagine being one of these Norwegian guys and you're completely isolated? And this girl is all you have for spank bank material? Does she just fuck everyone there? Does she withhold and tease them by dropping a towel or something? Jesus, no wonder they got Mew for this job. Their ratio is fucked.
And the last place where you want to be is cooped up with a dozen Norwegian guys.
They wouldn't bring an Alan Grant character, they'd bring in any girl with a paleontology background for an excuse to get more pussy down in the South Pole. We also see a shot of the hallway, which, yeah, maybe this is a nitpick, but it looks identical to the American base. Did they design them to be the same? Is there some sort of standardization? Maybe it's supposed to just be a rip from the original in order to make this movie actually feel good? I don't know. So they haul this thing back to base, still encased in the block of ice, and Everyone is doing their job to prep the removal of this thing from the ice till the head guy comes in and flops his gigantic dick on the table.
Before we do, I'm going to take a tissue sample.
Do you really think that's a good idea?
Yes, I do.
Mew tells him that this is a bad idea, but he doesn't fucking care. They both step out of the room and he says,
Don't contradict me in front of those people again. You're not here to think.
God damn, when I watch this, I laugh my ass off. It's like the guy read the script ahead of time. So they drill in and fuck it up, but it's okay. Now they're having a party. And the head guy is telling everyone about how an amazing a discovery this is. You see, this asshole's entire motivation is my legacy. He says to go on radio silence so no one else gets a hold of his precious Scooby snacks and steals the credit.
Make sure that everyone stays off the radio. We don't want any information out.
And that becomes the secondary antagonistic force of this movie. This guy is too far up his own ass to take any sort of precautions in hopes of getting recognition. He's kind of like Burke in Aliens. He's the corporate guy sent to recover the alien. He knew how dangerous they were, and he didn't really care. But Burke works because of that. This guy is just playing the corporation man without any understanding of what the hell he's doing.
And the corporations sit there in their corporation buildings and see that they're all corporation-y and they make money.
The closest we get to the Discovery shtick is like one line from Bennings.
Can't burn the find of the century.
Blair is the analog for this guy. Blair is basically the head guy who could take credit for dissecting the thing, but instead, this fucker goes into a diabetic rage and destroys all communication because he doesn't want it to escape. So these guys decide not to temperature control their discovery of the century, and the dog, who I don't know where he is in the 3D space of this movie, but somehow the dog can sense that the thing is awake and it's freaking out. When Clark put the dogs in the kennel, it wasn't until he left that the dogs even recognized something was wrong. But this dog can tell from a whole nother building that something is up, before the thing even breaks out of the ice. But the dog brings up an even bigger point. Why do the Norgies even have one dog? The Americans could justify having a kennel because it's assumed the dogs act as like a snow team or something. Hell, that's Clark's job. He's the dog manager guy. But what do they do with one dog in the Norwegian camp? Is it Lars's emotional support dog or something?
Jesus.
I don't think I need to really go into why those ruined movies. You've probably seen a 30-minute video on it already. Anyway, the thing breaks out and everyone splits up to look for it. It's doing some molting under a building and pulls a guy in with its tentacle, eating him. Everyone rushes out and starts blasting it with their flamethrowers. And this next bit is actually kind of interesting with how they don't show the thing. It jumps up into the building and punctures its claws through the walls. That's actually kind of a cool way to show the thing. You know it's hidden behind the walls, but all you see is the claws coming out. You get a glimpse of its power and size, but it leaves the rest to your imagination. It's too bad this is the only example of something like this happening in the movie, though. So this guy gets eaten, and now I'm kind of confused, because last I remember the thing doesn't actually need to eat you, just get a hold of you and mix DNA. In fact, the closest we ever get to seeing an assimilation process is Bennings covered in tentacles. Windows, of course, gets bitten and begins to turn. That was enough. He didn't need to be swallowed and gestated like this guy. The dogs didn't either. In fact, this actually is a huge benefit of the movie, the factor of the unseen. It's half the formula. With the remake, you have a horror movie. With the original, you have the horror combined with the mystery. It lets you go back and try to plot out the timeline of when people became the thing. At what point does Blair turn? What about Palmer?
Scientists, we're obliged to study it.
Even after it kills a guy, they're still circle jerking over it. There's a collective understanding between everyone that this is a legitimate threat. See, everyone but this guy? This completely changes the dynamic of the film. It was the guys versus the thing, and they turn on each other in fear, all while still trying to root the thing out. Now it's guys versus ignorance of authority versus the thing, to the point where the thing becomes a backdrop set piece to the conflict against the head guy for a portion of the movie. Everyone in the crew and the audience knows he's making the wrong decision, It's artificially dividing the characters to create conflict that isn't needed. The first movie works so well because it's just average guys succumbing to the paranoia and isolation, not against the ignorant man in charge. Gary would be that guy, but he gets tied down and subject to just as much shit as everyone else.
I know you gentlemen have been through a lot. And when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
It's a level playing field for all of them. MacReady is only our main character because he steps up where no one else does. So the Americans, the sick guy, and the Thing get in the helicopter and are about to leave for South America to get this guy medical attention. But as they're taking off, Mew starts flagging them down, and they're about to land again. But the Thing acts like a fucking idiot and tries to crash his plane.
With no survivors!
Now the problem here is this movie completely misunderstands the character of the Thing. And yes, the Thing is a character. It has motivation and a set of rules it operates by. The Thing is a predator, a clever one. Its goal is to assimilate or escape to the mainland, whichever comes first.
Somebody in this camp ain't what he appears to be. Right now, that may be one or two of us. By spring, it could be all of us.
That's why Blair went so ballistic. He figured out the motivations of the Thing. It waits for you to be alone. It doesn't expose itself unless it's absolutely necessary. Norris only attacked because Copper was sending electricity through him. Palmer only attacked because he had been exposed.
The blood from one of you things won't obey when it's attacked. You'll try and survive. Crawl away from a hot needle, say.
The dog Thing could have killed Clark when he was alone with it, but it didn't, because the Thing is smart. Even smart enough to get a hold of Gary's keys and destroy the blood samples. It only attacks when it's threatened. And even when it attacks and reveals itself, it does so in a terrifying scare tactic way to frighten the men. The drastic characterization shift between the two movies is ridiculous. In one movie, it's cold and calculated. In the other, it's trying as hard as it can to sabotage its own goals and plans. All it had to do was wait out the landing and relaunching, and it would have sailed off to the mainland. It completely breaks its own rules to a point where it's like the writers only got the most basic understanding of the movie. There's an alien that can replicate you, and no understanding beyond that point.
You see, what we're talking about here is an organism that imitates other life forms, and it imitates them perfectly. When this thing attacked our dogs, it tried to digest them, absorb them, and in the process shape its own cells to imitate them. This, for instance, that's not dog. It's imitation.
Even the last scene of the original with Childs and Mac, and they decide to wait each other out to see what happens in the morning, if either of them is a Thing, we know it has the patience to wait a man out. Childs could have killed Mac right there, but see, that completely misses the point. It's like the guys who made this decided they needed to fill a scare quota at a certain minute mark. The only reason the helicopter sequence happens is so they can be sent over the mountains. So we see this guy on the radio and he's calling out to anyone listening, like distress or hailing frequencies or something like that. But wouldn't Windows be able to hear any of this since he's on the radio all day? Actually, there is a deleted scene where they specifically try to call Windows but can't get a signal. Wouldn't this guy also be speaking in Norwegian if he's calling out to the mainland, like a Norwegian resupply embassy on the coast or something? But anyway, they're all talking about how for some reason it's impossible to save the crashed copter. And Mew comes in to tell them all that the Thing can replicate people. And no one believes her.
Adam saw it too.
Is that true?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we saw.
Not only does this change the dynamic yet again, but it brings in the question of why don't they just look at cell reproduction? Bring the team into the lab and put some untainted blood to mix with the Thing blood to see if it takes over. And the dynamic has changed to be 4 layers of conflict now. It's Mew trying to convince the crew, trying to convince the head guy, trying to stop the Thing. It's drastically different from the guys trying to figure out how it works.
Now how's this motherfucker wake up after thousands of years in the ice?
And how can it look like a dog?
I don't know how.
Because it's different than us, see? Because it's from outer space. What do you want from me? Ask him.
If I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me?
Mac was never trying to convince everyone of the thing's danger. Maybe it was an intentional choice to show how cucked Sweden is.
Not Swedish, Mac, the Norwegian.
What the fuck is that? Did the lighting guys forget to move their cards before they started rolling?
I found them by a puddle of blood in the shower.
Puddle of blood?
I don't think the thing creates a ton of blood when it assimilates someone. Bennings' clothes were covered in blood, but the dirty long johns were clean for the most part. None of the other guys were bloody. Was it because someone had fillings? How do you know it wasn't just from this girl's monster period? You can't hate me for asking this. It's not out of the question if you're gonna bring women into the base.
I found them by a puddle of blood in the shower.
Damn, Mary. Maybe this bitch menstruated like a motherfucker in the shower. Why you gotta call her out like this?
Edward, you can't leave. You can't leave. You don't know what we're dealing with.
Well done.
So now the women fail the Bechdel test together because only the one other woman believes her. GG guys, female empowerment against the stupid men of the movie was really where the story needed to go. So Juliet convinces Mew to follow her into a secluded area, and instead of getting something interesting like a lesbian sex scene, we get Juliet taking her sweet-ass time, showing off before she starts assimilating Mew. And keep in mind, this is the only other woman that's been in the camp for I don't even know how long. Just imagine being Tormund in this movie, and having to be all like, damn, Juliet, you fucking fine, all sexy with your horrific toothy maw body and crazy eyes, pudgy face. I would totally have sex with you, when all he really wants to do is just fuck another 16-year-old Swede in Juliet's room. Like, seriously, imagine having to be that Viking guy and not only open the door while Juliet flaunts her disgusting body in front of you, the light of the flamethrower revealing her tentacles, camel toe, and just stand there, time after time, while she slowly slogs out of the shower. Not only having to tolerate her monstrous fucking chest vagina, but her haughty attitude as everyone nearby tells her that she's still got it, and damn, Juliet looks like that? Because they're not the ones who have to stand there and watch her pudgy fucking thing teeth sit flaccid and dull on her disgusting CGI body. You've been fucking nothing but a healthy diet of tight, blonde Swedes and later alleged migrant rape victims for your entire career! Coming straight out of the slums of Norway. You've never even seen anything this fucking disgusting before. And now you swear you can taste the slime that's breaking out on her unshapely ass crack as she leaves it open while wearing those improperly fitting snow jackets. Smugly assured that you're enjoying the opportunity to get paid to stand there, open her door, and revel in her statuesque, for that's what she calls it, beauty. Beauty she worked so hard for in the previous minutes, and then she calls for another door to open. And you know you could kill every single person in this base before the other guys could put you down. But you sit there and endure because you're a fucking Nordic guy. You're not gonna lose your future Game of Thrones career over this. Just bear it. Cringe your face and bear it. They take Juliet's corpse and burn it in the snow, just like Bennings. And we get almost the exact same scene as the original, just not as good.
It attacks its prey, copies it perfectly, and then hides inside it, waiting.
Is it still among us?
Could be any of us.
We gotta get out of here.
Right now.
And you could be getting in a vehicle with it. Be alone, vulnerable. That's exactly what it wants. Not to mention you'd be giving it a way out of here, a way to spread. It's like a virus. So what do we do with any virus?
Quarantine. We isolate it, and then we kill it.
We have to rely on science. Exposing our uncontaminated blood to the cells of the creature might create a reaction.
So we take blood samples from everybody. Yeah, we test each one of them.
Adam and I can do that.
Okay. Lars and I will disable the vehicles. We have to trust in this plan. It's our only chance of making it through this.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you'd just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won. There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. We're gonna find out who's who.
Oh god, comparing these scenes pisses me off so much. Okay. Keep in mind, I edited this down only to the dialogue for both scenes to avoid copyright. But look at the information revealed in both of them. She gives a not nearly as cool version of MacReady's speech. They say they need to leave, but then they think, oh, you could be alone with the thing, and then give it away to escape. And then they realize they have to quarantine to come up with a blood test, and they need to disable the vehicles, and all this is told to you by the group. Mac explains stuff in such a succinct and badass way, it's almost hard to recap it here. But essentially he says the thing is gonna hide, but fight if it has to. There's none of this committee agreement bullshit, just our protagonist explaining what's about to happen. The panning shot of all the other characters as they silently watch him. We see all of our possible suspects. We know at least one of them is the thing. There is that element of mystery that is so essential in this kind of movie. Now you may think, oh, but what's so wrong about them making a plan? It's logical. Doesn't everyone complain that most horror movies don't act logical enough? Is it logical? Yeah, I guess so. Is it interesting? Oh, absolutely not. The entirety of the original is full of characters making logical decisions, but they're all done in a way that isn't explicitly spelled out for you. Now, for an easy comparison to this, let's look at disabling vehicles. In the original, Blair secretly destroys them on his own so that no one can escape. It's a logical choice for Blair to make, and it isn't explicitly spelled out with the big scene of Blair saying to himself, oh gee, this thing could spread, so now I'm going to disable all the vehicles. No, he just goes out and destroys them because that's what he'd do. And if your audience isn't completely brain dead, they can figure out why he did it. And look at the length of both of these. In just under 45 seconds, MacReady tells us exactly what you need to know for what's about to come. The remake takes almost 2 minutes to explain it all, but it feels like 5, because they drag on with these long pauses in between every single line of dialogue. And on the blood test, this asshole brings up the blood test in the most pretentious way possible.
We have to rely on science.
And proceeds to pull the entire concept of the blood test out of his ass, when at least Copper was a little skeptical the blood test would work.
Well, yeah, possibly. I've been thinking about a blood serum test. What's that? We could take a sample of each person's blood. Could mix it with uncontaminated blood. I suppose if there's a reaction, we'd know who isn't human.
And of course the blood test never happens in either of these movies. One for worthy reasons and one for stupid ones, but I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Quarantine.
The word of the day is quarantine. Quarantine. Quarantine.
They're so intent on quarantine, but they don't come to the same conclusion that Fuchs does.
If a small particle of this thing is enough to take over an entire organism, then everyone should prepare their own meals, and I suggest we only eat out of cans.
The Norwegian Gnolls could have killed everyone if they'd been assimilated. Now, these guys that were in the helicopter crash, well, turns out they lived and walked all the way back to camp. And now I gotta bring up how fucking dark this movie is, and obviously I don't mean in terms of tone. The picture is fucking dark. Not only is the lighting flat in the interiors, but the exteriors are damn near pitch black. Did they even hire a cinematographer for this movie? Oh, they did? Oh, what else has he done? Taken? That's it? Maybe he should have taken that light's power cord, tied a noose with it, and plugged it in so I can see what the fuck is happening on screen.
You need our help.
Not only does this movie rely on cheap jump scares, but it also uses cheap musical cues to manipulate you. Allow me to point to the blood test scene. All you hear is the ambient winds blowing against the building. No music, no manipulation of your emotions. The scene plays out in silence. For almost 10 minutes, the tension cranks up. Not once does the music disturb the connection between you and what's happening on screen.
An artist respects the silence and serves the foundation of creativity.
Speaking of blood tests, all while this is happening, the two science guys have been taking their sweet-ass time writing names on tape and putting them on tubes. And this guy is doing it like a dumbass. You write the names on the tape, and then you put them on the tubes. No wonder they've taken so fucking long setting it up. His hand probably keeps slipping when he rotates to write another letter. Again to the blood test scene. Max sets this up in like 5 to 10 minutes. Tops. You can't possibly tell me it's taken almost a whole day to write a dozen names on tubes. Well, lucky for everyone's sake, the whole lab burns down, and now there's no possible way to do a blood test scene. Guess we're just gonna have to go with the most namby-pamby bitch test the screenwriters could think of. Too bad they were written into a hole to begin with. Yeah, that's right. If this is the way they wanted to tell this story, nothing they could have done would make it not like a complete rip-off of the original. If they do a blood test, there's no way it could ever be as good as the original. If they do a tooth scene, it's just gonna get compared to a blood test. It's a lose-lose situation for them no matter what. But is there a way for the story of the Norwegians to be told different enough? I don't know. I've been thinking about this the entire review. I'll let you know if I reach a conclusion. So instead of doing a blood test, they decide to open up each other's mouth like a bunch of limp-wristed faggots to see who's real. They base it off of fillings, so anyone who doesn't have fillings is subject to suspicion. This, of course, is all conducted by Mew, who carries the scene like a toddler deadlifting the bar. It's fucking pathetic. It's even worse that Tormund creates artificial tension by not opening his mouth immediately. But why though? If he knows he has fillings, it shouldn't be a problem for him. And opening your mouth isn't nearly as tense as the blood sample scene. What's the thing gonna do when you find out it doesn't have any fillings? Well, probably explode at you since it's known to do that now.
So I'm gonna get killed because I floss.
It's a 10 out of 10 line, buddy. Oh man, I'm so glad that exists. Thank you. That's the best line in the movie, right there. Amazing writing. Fucking Oscar-worthy. GG, faggots. Going in between teeth prevents cavities. Just look at her. She's terrified. She can't command the scene to save her life.
Just go stand over there.
And see, this is the fundamental divide between the two protagonists of these movies. When Mac runs the scene, there is absolutely no fucking around. He ties everyone up, even the bodies.
They're dead, Mac.
And if anyone tries to rush him, he fucking kills them.
Just go stand over there.
She can't carry the scene. She's nowhere near as strong of a character as Mac. Why is she the protagonist? In fact, why the fuck are there women in this movie at all? That was another thing that was so good about the original. It's all men. It's just a bunch of fucking men.
It's gonna be called Guy Heaven.
There's no bullshit with any of them. None of this.
Just go stand over there.
Bullshit. What does making a woman in charge do? Was it her turn or something? Was it because they were Norwegian? She isn't some sort of Ripley badass. She barely even wields a flamethrower in this movie. And on top of that, she doesn't do shit in the story either. She's some sort of paleontologist? What the fuck paleontology does she even do? She doesn't excavate the ship. She doesn't excavate the thing. She doesn't thaw the thing out. The only reason she has any semblance of authority is because she saw some blood in the shower. And while we're at it, let's look at character introductions. We open on her, probing a dead bear, listening to Who Can It Be Now? We open on Mac, drinking scotch, playing chess in the chess wizard. He's separated from the other guys in the rec room. He's in his own shack. He studies the board, makes his move, confident the computer has finally screwed up. Until he realizes he's been duped and pours his scotch into the computer, crying. Cheeky bitch. We learn so much about him in just this tiny scene alone. More character than we ever get from Mew in this entire movie. You know who would have been a great protagonist? Lars. Lars is a fucking badass throughout this entire movie. Look at him, this man is a fucking tank. He gets shit done. He isn't afraid of anything. He's willing to shove a flamethrower in the face of anyone who even gets up too quick. He's even got a dog by his side. And the best part is, he doesn't even speak English. But Lars is smart enough and determined enough to chase the dog into the snow. He's a hunter, relentless in his conquest to kill the thing. A man capable of fighting it on its own. Too bad he gets shot in the face by Gary like a bitch. Lars continuously steals the show in not so obvious ways. The problem is, the movie keeps trying to make this guy the MacReady of the film. Get it? Cause he's the fucking helicopter pilot? When Lars undoubtedly deserves the title. Look at this man! He fucking tromps into the scene, flamethrower in hand, ready to burn this fucker alive. No one called for Lars to get the flamethrower, he just fucking appears without even saying a word.
It's bloody absurd.
This is pure nonsense. nonsense.
So they line up all those dirty non-fillings against the wall, and she decides they need to bring the helicopter pilots inside to check their teeth. Now, I don't know why they didn't just check their teeth there and bring them in, but whatever.
Smart company.
He said it like it's a fucking joke. I want to believe this wasn't a serious line, but given the rest of the movie, I don't think that was supposed to make me snort in laughter when I watched it. Since they're all lined up against the wall, let's talk about characterization. In the last movie, the characters are very clearly outlined in what they do or what their personality is. Each have a job or position that's unique to them. Mac is the pilot, Knowles is the cook, Blair is one of the doctors, Copper's a doctor, Fuchs is their assistant, Palmer smokes weed, Bennings is uptight, Gary manages the place, Windows is the radio operator, Clark is the dog guy. I could go on. What about these guys? The fuck do half these people even do? Really though, I can only name a few of their roles, like manager, radio guy, science guy, and assistant science guy. The fuck do the rest of these guys do? What makes them unique? Knowles roller skates. There's no one that has some sort of trait that makes them stand out from the rest of the crew. It becomes just a body count movie because these characters are amorphous blobs that no one cares about. They're virtually indistinguishable from one another. Because these characters are so nebulous in their personalities, my ability to care about them diminishes greatly. The movie also lacks another element that ties each of these characters together. All these traits that the original cast possesses, the unique and well-defined personalities, the all-male cast, the way they talk to each other, it all builds such a strong sense of camaraderie.
McCready, I know Bennings. I've known him for 10 years. He's my friend.
It's clear these guys have been here for a long time. There's a sense of family between them all. That's what makes it so fascinating when they all turn on each other. Even in their suspicion, they still talk to each other with a level of comfort.
You ain't tying me up.
Then I'll have to kill you, child.
Then kill me.
That element doesn't exist in the remake. They tell jokes and drink and dance together, but you don't feel the sense of camaraderie. And that's just with the Norwegian. A certain prejudice exists between the Norgies and the Americans. There becomes this divide between them on the basis of country for no reason. It just adds these separate, unnecessary layers of conflict when it should only end up being the crew versus the thing. Just look at how fucking dark it is. Flares is supposed to be bright as hell. It's the third time I'm talking about this. That's the whole point of a flare, though! So the helicopter guys have disappeared, and Lars, being the absolute machine that he is, goes looking for them in the next building, but he gets swiped. He then isn't seen for again till the very end of the movie. So what the hell was he doing for the rest of the film? He literally just fucking disappears from the story. We know he doesn't get attacked by the thing, and it doesn't look like he got attacked by the pilots, so what the hell happened to him? Was he taking a tea party break or something? And if you're in any way familiar with the thing, you can probably guess Lars is gonna live, since he's the only Norwegian that doesn't speak English.
Oh, that's Lars. He doesn't understand English. But...
And in the opening of the next movie, the Norwegians can't speak English and are therefore killed because of it. Everyone hears a noise and they rush over to it, and the score is just so invasive. It's this bland orchestral music that can be drag and dropped in any movie and it would be exactly the same. John Carpenter has always made incredibly unique and iconic sounds for scoring his films, and he always goes into scoring with a certain mindset. Music is like walking on a carpeted room barefoot. You initially notice the carpet, but soon your brain stops remembering it's even there. It's just like breathing manually. What works so well about Carpenter's scores is that they function as tools to build atmosphere. Can you imagine what any scene for the thing would be like if it had an orchestra on it? For those that enjoy Carpenter's work, there's an understanding of the importance of the scores he uses. It's pretty safe to say that his films wouldn't be as iconic had they not had such unique scores. But the original did have an orchestral score by Ennio Morricone! Yeah, I know that, but look at when the score is used. Mostly on sequences of exposition or the like. When the guys are surveying the Norwegian base, when they find the crashed saucer, when they're looking at the charred remains of the thing. It's not used in key character-driven scenes. It's smart enough to know when to hold back and let you get immersed in the scene. This scene shouldn't have music. Anyway, so they're having this standoff, and the true son of Odin pops this guy in the fucking head with no warning.
I'm Nigerian. I don't belong here, man.
Really though, he didn't even give this guy a fucking warning. At least when Mac killed Clark, he told him to back off first.
That's close enough, Clark.
And now everyone's looking at this dead body like, dude, what the fuck is your problem? And after the explosion, Mew's spotlight is finally stolen by the guy who could be MacReady, because he actually takes charge and starts doing shit other than...
Just go stand over there.
He moves everyone into the rec room, and oh no, turns out this guy's a thing. But you got me asking now, how long has this guy been a thing? I watched this movie once all the way through, and a second time, scene by scene, to write this script, and the countless number of times I have scrubbed through every single fucking scene in order to find footage to make this thing, and I don't remember any point where he could have gotten eaten. That's another thing that makes Carpenter's work so well. Like I've mentioned before, there is a timeline you could build. Certain points of the movie where it's totally possible for certain characters to be assimilated, left off-screen or alone for enough time to reasonably make a time frame and piece together how everything happened. At no point in the movie is this guy given that time frame. He's just the thing now. The hand creature attacks Tormund and everyone just looks at him and stands there like a bunch of fucking tards. And here we get more references to a better movie. Flamethrower won't work, destroying the pool lamp, and the thing also forms a whip.
A whip? I hope you brought something more powerful than that. Ow! 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 Holy crow, that hurt! I can't feel my damn fingers!
Take me to your master!
Okay, down! Just take it easy with the whip.
And here we finally get to everyone's main gripe with this movie, the CG. I'm a little surprised it took me this long to get to it, but you know, why not save it for the main course? This is the big part of the movie that everyone says is why it went wrong. The Thing has been widely regarded as the Bible of practical effects. It is intrinsically tied to the movie. You can't have a conversation about The Thing without someone bringing up the practical effects. When they made this remake, they roughly understood that stuff had to be done practical or it would be essentially spitting in the face of what makes the original so popular. They actually made most of those effects practical animatronics, and said they were only going to do minor CGI touch-ups on them in editing, but instead, somewhere in post, someone decided to draw over all the work that these guys had done and made it all CG. All these creatures, specifically planned out, made months in advance, whole teams of people spending countless hours, sculpting, wiring, molding, casting, painting, all for nothing. And the worst part of it, almost none of it feels unique or inspired. It's just mostly human-like forms with extra limbs and teeth. Look at this. Nothing about Norris looks human, but the face. And each of the creatures is constantly changing. In fact, it seems like they only looked at this scene. Guy's chest opens up, tentacles pop out. It seems to kind of be the standard. Norris's chest opened up? Palmer's head opened up? Guys, what if we had a thing where both his face and his chest opened up? The Thing never continuously looks the same for more than too long. The humanity vanishes and is replaced with some grotesque combination of the familiar mixed with the otherworldly. The remake just makes people with more limbs and teeth. It stays familiar the whole time. It stops being The Thing, and instead is just some weird replication monster. And there's so much variety in the look of each thing. The dog looks different from Twisted Face, which looks different from Bennings, which looks different from Norris, which looks different from Palmer, which looks different from the final Blair dog amalgamation. Only the jockey is in any way special in this movie. It does have that truly alien look to it, covered in slime. The way those eyes blink, it's its coolest feature. But the guy was completely taken out of the final movie. There's this part where Mew is looking in the middle of the ship and there's all this data floating around. Well, it turns out that was the jockey. But it was drawn over with CG. So now she just stares at these long takes of nothing. Oh yeah, slime, wetness, lube.
Precious bodily fluids.
Look at this, the original monster, they're absolutely soaked with lube. Look at the remake, it's dry, boring, stale, even the animatronics are dry. There's a significant lack of lube in this film. Every movie I watch must meet a minimum lube requirement. That's why I like The Thing so much. It's full of tentacles and lube. So now we get the reveal of how the Twisted Face thing came to be. And it's so fucking disappointing. It's Edward mixed with Adam, and that's it. This becomes the big monster in the house for the next few scenes. And the problem is, It stays like that the whole fucking time. Look at this thing. There's so much expression and movement put into these faces. It's made like it was burned mid-transformation or tried to separate itself from the flames. There's energy behind the separation of the faces, and this is coupled with how the thing is always transforming itself. Instead, it's apparently the final form of these two fucksticks being this ugly fucking CGI abortion, and not the good kind of abortion like this thing, a cinematic abortion. And yeah, it becomes a Monster in the House movie. Like I've been touching on for a little bit, this is no longer a Thing movie. It's a character-driven ensemble male cast trying to figure out who's who. The monsters are only a small part of the story. They're a narrative tool, just shown very extravagantly. That's what I've been trying to spell out. The Thing ultimately is not about the monster, but the guys. The remake completely misconstrues the popularity of the original. The Thing only has screen time for like 5 whole minutes. You really think that this movie has stood the test of time on 5 minutes alone? No, because the rest of the movie is so engaging. We also get how the axe got stuck in the wall because Discount McCready tries to kill the hand thing and it just stitches itself back together. Great, I am so glad that I got the answer to the question that had been burning in my mind when I first watched the Thing. I finally get to know exactly how that axe got there. Too bad everything about the Thing had to be fucking bastardized in the process.
There was a level of reverse engineering so that it really did link to the Carpenter movie.
We felt like detectives, basically. Like there's a crime scene and what could have happened.
We had to approach it as a story by autopsy.
This was like going to an autopsy. You know it's dead, and nothing's gonna change that. But you gotta do an autopsy to find out what killed it, or who killed it.
In that we had relics from Carpenter's film that informed us of what had to have happened here at the Norwegian camp.
The first thing that we did is we looked at that set in the Carpenter movie, the ruined Norwegian camp, and we thought, okay, working backwards, how do we arrive at this freakish burned carcass of some half man, half monster, a fire axe in the wall, and a torched compound, a guy with his throat cut in a radio operator's chair.
We had to try to explain how that ship was the way they found it. How he got buried, how he got uncovered.
McReady finds the ice block that the alien broke out of. We get to fill in the blanks of what happened there.
Matthias and I spent many an hour, pausing 16 minutes, 45 seconds. Okay, there's a fire axe in the door. How did that get there?
It was pure survival for Kate and Carter, and he needed an axe to just defend themselves.
The axe in the door. We had to decide, well, how tall is the actor when he walks by? And we'll say he's about 5'9". Okay, so this is where it's gonna go in the door because it's got a match.
We could talk about it all day long, and we did. It was impossible for us to make this movie without acknowledging in a very real way the Carpenter movie.
They set out to make this movie to explain all the questions they found in the original, but they cut out the shit that would have actually answered any of that. Like how the guy ended up slitting his wrists in the chair. Honestly, I don't blame him for committing Sudoku like that. If I were in this movie, I'd want to as well. I'd actually found it in a deleted scene, and it looked like they were going to add the Thing in post, so I've done my best to recreate what this would have looked like after the CG was added. Anyway, this movie is now Raptors in the Kitchen scene from Jurassic Park, and the head guy gets eaten and steals a snowcrawler to get back to the alien ship. Remember earlier in the movie when the cables to start the snowcrawlers were cut so the Thing couldn't escape? Well, that worked out real fucking well, didn't it? The Thing had absolutely no problem getting it started again. Blair fucking destroyed the consoles for the helicopter and snowcrawlers. These guys just clipped the cables. So the thing takes off, and Mew and Not McCready give chase in another snowcrawler, which again, they seem to have no problem hotwiring. And in the hour-long drive to the crash site, she starts realizing how wet she is in such a life and death situation, and starts giving him the fuck me eyes. Now see, this actually had nothing to do with the movie. This was just Mary Elizabeth Winstead forgetting her lines and realizing in a split second that she could do better than Riley Stearns. It was this exact moment she had the epiphany that her career had become big enough she could move up to blowing members of the Jedi Council instead of just blowing small-time screenwriters. So they get to the ship and the alien starts turning the thing back on. Anyway, the ship now just looks like some sort of weird angular version of the derelict from Alien. And we also get that shot of the not real thing like I mentioned earlier. And instead of that being the final boss, it's this ugly motherfucker. CG face abortion. This thing. Of all the disgusting stomach-churning imagery they could have chosen, they picked this asshole's face. It's honestly on the level of Doom 3 and the Scorpion King. You know, CG from a movie that came out 10 years before this. Now, I don't have any real evidence for this, but it seems like the original Big Boss was going to be a awakened version of the Thing, but that's only going off the fact that they made a whole animatronic for it. But it looks like it was only operating in just one shot. But Mew hides an event, which I don't understand exactly how she's not dead. See, the Thing can change into any size or shape, or even easier, split off into smaller portions to allow itself to follow her through the vent. It wasn't like she was going anywhere, she was at a dead end. She ends up throwing a grenade in the Thing's mouth and blowing it up with the ship. She and Discount McCready escape, and it turns out, oh no, he's really a Thing too. She pulls out a flamethrower and is now caught in the moment, torn apart by the idea that she won't be able to climb him like a tree in the back of the snowplow, because snow wasn't the only thing she wanted plowed after this adventure. You see, if you put women in a movie of all men, you're gonna get me making these jokes. And no one wants that. Really though, she's crushed by the realization that now isn't the time to monkey branch off Riley and burns the Thing. She then hops in the other snowcrawler and we fade to black. But wait, there's more! Mixed in with the credits, we get a short sequence of Lars appearing out of fucking nowhere with the guy who just landed there in the helicopter. And the dog thing running out of the snow. Lars taking fucking command and taking off from the chopper as he shoots at the dog. And guess what? It's the best fucking scene of the movie. Probably because it had as little as possible to do with the last 100 minutes of bullshit. And it's got Lars taking charge and being a fucking badass. It's really quite sad that it took this long for the movie to finally start feeling like the Thing. It's too bad, but honestly, I'm just glad this shit's over. But now that these movies are concluded, let's do a recap and look at the pacing since these movies are almost identical in length. Character deaths versus Thing appearances. So we automatically get a significantly smaller cast than the original, and this is going to make it a lot harder for the remake to meaningfully kill off characters. Now the dog thing reveals itself about 30 minutes in, alerting everyone to its potential danger, but no characters are actually killed until Bennings, which is about 20 minutes later. The first death doesn't occur till a little over a third of the way through the movie. After which, we get a very long chunk of the movie dedicated to watching these characters break down and turn on each other. Fuchs' body is found in the snow, but the next on-screen death doesn't come till about 35 minutes after Bennings, with Norris and Copper dying to it. The movie then kicks into high gear with the scene immediately following, resulting in the deaths of 3 characters. 4 are left now, with Gary being assimilated by Blair. Null sees this happen and follows them, and it's assumed he's killed. This is about 10 minutes after the blood test. Mac then fights the final Thing and meets Childs outside and the movie ends. Time is primarily given to character development and rule establishment, with the last 30 minutes dedicated to the chaos that ensues. At the end of the day, 2 characters left, 4 Thing appearances, Bennings not included. Okay, now the remake has got a lot more characters to kill, so they gotta work overtime. One guy is killed at 28 minutes in, it's the same time the dog thing appeared. This guy reveals himself about 15 minutes later, killing both of them, and 6 minutes later, Juliet attacks, killing this guy in the process. Now we're around 50 minutes, about halfway through the movie. 5 out of 16 characters are dead. About 20 minutes later, we get this scene with the highest kill count, killing this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. All in the span of about 6 minutes, and on top of that, this guy dies about a minute and a half after that, and this guy is killed in a deleted scene. With half an hour to go, they did a good job of tying up all those problematic loose ends by killing fucking everyone in less than 10 minutes. God damn! These people are made absolute cannon fodder. Why do you include so many fucking characters if they're all just gonna be killed off at once? This guy dies at the last minute of the movie. Mew doesn't even die either, we just fade to black on her. Lars is the only one that ends up surviving all this. So overall, 2 characters live, 5 things, ultimately both movies reach the same conclusion, but the body count pacing is a fucking nightmare. This movie fails on every possible level. Characters, lighting, sound, story, effects, nothing is safe. And for 7 fucking years, I have heard the line that, oh, if they just used the practical effects, the movie would have worked. Bullshit! Practical effects can't save the dog shit writing, practical effects can't save the mediocre acting, practical effects sure as shit can't fix the fundamentally broken character dynamics. But the people who wanted this movie to be made had no concept of quit while you're ahead. Even the guys who actually had to make this thing make it out to be like they knew they couldn't recreate it.
You've got to be real careful when you revisit material that has been loved. Only do it if there's something new to be done with it.
When I first got the script, I was a little bit frightened, because I was like, this is a lot to live up to.
John Carpenter considers it the best film he ever made. When I called him to tell him about this, he said, hey, good luck, man.
I'm a Nigerian.
The Thing is a lightning in a bottle film. It is almost impossible to recreate without being a complete retread. That being said, is it possible to make another Thing film?
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Bexman's shameless plug for how to make a better Thing movie. 1. Don't set it in the Norwegian camp. If you're really serious about it, don't set it in any place. It would be meticulously compared to its predecessor on every level. 2. Set it somewhere different enough, yet still maintain the element of isolation. A friend and I once talked about how you can make the Thing in some sort of underground science bunker, cut off from the rest of the world. The Thing ended up escaping and now is some sort of Argentinian underground base, be it military or otherwise. The place goes on lockdown, no way in, no way out. 3. Understand that it's the character dynamics that make the movie so good and not just the monster. 4. Slow burn is your friend. Build atmosphere. 5. Practical effects only. They can't save a shit movie, but they can certainly make a good one better. 6. No women. 7. Make Lars your protagonist, or make your protagonist like Lars. 8. Include different ways to identify the Thing, like tattoos or lost fingers, stuff the Thing can't replicate. 9. Arrange the stakes so it's only the survival of both parties, no corporate bullshit interference. And 10. Don't even fucking bother making a movie because it'll never be as good as the original. And yeah, I've been saying original this whole time, knowing full well it is based off the Howard Hawks Thing from Another World. I love this movie to such an autistic degree. You don't think I wouldn't know that? Joke's on anyone in the comments who couldn't wait till the end of the video and felt the need to correct me and say, actually? You've been rused, asshole. But if you've made it this far, GG. With all that said, it could have been possible to tell the story of the Norwegian camp. It's just gonna come to the same pitfalls as this movie got. If it was some Norwegian foreign film, I'd have so much more respect for it than I actually do. If it was some all-Norwegian cast and a bunch of guys who deeply cared about the original and wanted to tell their own spin, spoken all in Norse, I'd be okay with that for the most part. But that's not what this movie is. It's a film that reeks of corporatism. It's a Universal movie made to make a quick nostalgia buck. The exact same thing that disenfranchised Carpenter from making more films. A small-time foreign film is vastly different from a corporate hack job. This movie is ultimately based off of 4 shots. The axe, the ice block, the slit wrists, and the twisted face. They designed this movie so that every single detail of what happened to the Norwegians was explained. All that mystery is given away for no reason, when mystery is the strength of the horror genre. There is nothing that could have been done to save this movie. Like I said at the beginning, it was doomed from the start. Now there's a theory that at the end of the original, Childs is a thing, and Mac tests him to see if he'll drink some of his booze. Knowing that they established the rule of no sharing food or drinks, or that perhaps he handed him a Molotov cocktail to see if he'd know the difference between scotch and kerosene. Childs also has no breath, and a different colored jacket from when we last saw him. Now, all of it is purposefully left ambiguous, but if Childs is a thing, then this movie is the equivalent of Childs. It may share the same setting, it may share the same characters, it may share the same name, but this movie is an imitation, and a bad one at that.